The duffel's wheels clacked against the asphalt, a dull rhythm that echoed more than it should have in the empty lane. No one else in line. Just me. The guards motioned without speaking, young, clean-shaven, their eyes flicking between each other like they hadn't seen someone like me in a while. Or ever. Step aside, ma'am. Bag on the table. Their gloves scraped across the weatherproof fabric. Zippers opened. Pouches peeled. One guard unrolled the contents with deliberate tension, as if afraid something might go off. Coils of wire spilled onto the cold steel surface, tangled with infrared adapters, stripped circuit boards, and my battered signal repeater. Specialist Ruiz tilted his head. You traveled with this? It's not illegal, I said. My voice sounded quieter than I expected. He didn't answer. Just pulled out the cracked tablet, flipped it over. The display buzzed faintly, then died. The other guard, Corporal Lee, thumbed through my ID folder. He stopped on the badge. It was government-issued, sure, but the stamp had faded, and the expiration date read 5 years out of range. He lifted the badge with 2 fingers, as if it might disintegrate. You're a contractor? This expired in 21. I said. Now I'm here to report interference patterns. Coastal radar anomalies. Ruiz snorted under his breath. Got a whole lot of cables for a reporting visit. I kept my hands behind my back. Still, unmoving. Let them read what they wanted in my silence. The truth was I hadn't stood this close to a gate in over a decade. They tore into the duffel deeper. Pouches that hadn't been unzipped since the Atlantic mission. My notes spilled out, handwritten, dog-eared, stapled and restapled, watermarked with time. They barely looked at the diagrams. They wouldn't understand them anyway. Woolley said. He lifted the hard case that held my scope, old carbon shell, scratched all over. On one side, faded almost to nothing, was a patch sewn with exact precision. A hawk mid-dive, its wings dissolving into storm gray clouds. No lettering. No insignia. Just that image. Lee tilted it toward Ruiz. You ever seen this? That's when the voice came from behind them. Firm. Curious. Hold everything. A colonel. Boots clicking as he stepped from the checkpoint booth. His eyes were sharp but tired. He saw the badge, sure, but his gaze stayed on the patch. For a moment, he didn't blink. That patch, he said, almost a whisper. Then sharper, that Sentinel Squad. He didn't ask me. He didn't need to. I met his eyes. Let him see I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He stepped forward and said it again, quieter this time. Hold everything. The guards froze. Monroe didn't have to raise his voice. They stepped back from the table instinctively, like something unseen had just shifted in the air. I bent to zip my duffel slowly, methodically. The cords, modules, and case went back in with practiced precision. My fingers remembered the order even after all these years. That's the thing about field work, you don't forget the layout. Not if you survive. The colonel stepped beside me. You got a name? Dana Carter, I said. Civilian analyst now. Used to be systems. Used to be, he repeated. I saw the calculation in his eyes. How old I looked, older than 39 for sure. The sun hadn't touched me in months, maybe years. My skin bore the quiet erosion of someone who's lived more hours underground than above it. Where have you been, Carter? Not here, I said, closing the final zipper. He didn't smile, but something flickered in the corner of his mouth. Come with me. No one spoke as we walked across the tarmac. The guards watched like they'd just seen a ghost, and maybe they had. Because according to every file still classified under tier black, I was dead. Kia. March 14, 2017. Naval scamboat Vengeance lost off the Puerto Rican trench. Sentinel Squad presumed destroyed. No bodies recovered. No transmissions traced. No evidence surfaced. Except here I was, rolling my bag like a traveling saleswoman, carrying a cracked tablet and a case full of forgotten frequencies. He led me into a side annex, cooler than the heat outside, metal walls humming with old power. No surveillance in here. No ID checks. Just the two of us and the sound of my boots on concrete. You're supposed to be dead, Monroe said finally. That mission, we sent recovery for weeks. You vanished. I nodded. I know. You were part of Sentinel Squad. I was radar systems lead. No one's seen any of you since. That's the point, I said. That's what they needed us to be. He folded his arms. You come back now with this. He gestured to the tablet I'd handed him. Claiming radar interference? From where? The Coastline. Multiple installations from Carolinas to Key West. You've been logging anomalies for 2 months. I intercepted some of the logs. They aren't weather. They're pulse-based. His eyes sharpened. You hacked a defense net? Didn't have to. The old ports still ping back if you know the legacy keys. Sentinel wrote the early firmware. We buried a lot of things in it. He stared at the tablet, then tapped it on. The screen flickered and held. A visual diagnostic blinked. A wave graph of burst interference at 6-second intervals. Distorted peaks like heartbeats gone wrong. Monroe frowned. The contractor teams couldn't trace it. We assumed it was solar flare residuals. It's not, I said. It's synthetic. Modulated. He looked up. From what? I leaned forward. I don't know yet. But the pulse signature. It's close to something we used in BlackNet relays. From before Sentinel disappeared. He froze. Just for a second. So you're saying what? Someone's copying your signal. I looked at him square. No. I'm saying it's ours. From someone who was trained the way we were. Monroe exhaled. That would mean that we're not all gone, I said. Or that someone else found our tools. He paced a short circle, his boots scratching against the floor. Then he asked what I'd been waiting for. Why now, Carter? Why come back? I opened the field manual. Set it on the desk between us. It was torn, water-damaged, filled with overwritten notations and updated maps. I pointed to the southern arc of the coast. These are the test points I already scanned. All of them show bleed-in from the same signal. Same interval. It's not jamming yet. But if it stabilizes, it could reroute the entire coastal net. That means no advanced detection. No airspace integrity. No maritime early warning. Someone's warming up the grid. Monroe stared at the scope patch on my case again. His voice was lower now. You were dead. That's what we believed. That's what the official record says. I sat back. That's what they wanted everyone to believe. But I've been watching. Quietly. Off the grid. And now I'm here because I can't ignore what I'm seeing anymore. He didn't respond right away. Just turned the cracked tablet over and over in his hands, then finally whispered. It can't be her, but if she's back, then so are they, I finished. He looked at me for a long time after that. Then said only, you'll have access to the diagnostics room under supervision, but you stay on campus. No outside comms. Not until I know what this is. Fine, I said, picking up the bag again. Just keep your people out of my gear. They'll trigger things they won't understand. As he led me through the next set of doors, I noticed his hand lingered an extra second on the handle. Some part of him still trying to reconcile the fact that I was real. That Sentinel wasn't buried. Not yet. Not completely. They gave me a holding room. Not a suite. Not a lab. Just a repurposed storage bay behind the diagnostics corridor. Fluorescent light. Single chair. Security camera in the corner. They said it was temporary processing, but I'd worked these compounds before. I knew a box when I saw one. The guards who brought me in, Ruiz and Lee again, weren't quiet about it. Ruiz lingered by the door. You really think you're gonna plug into coastal systems with that antique tablet? He meant it as a joke, but Lee didn't laugh. She shouldn't be in here without clearance, Lee said to the empty hallway. She's got no badge, no assignment number, no chain of custody for those electronics. We'd get written up for less. I sat at the desk. Quiet. Still. Let them circle like dogs around something they didn't understand. My presence here rattled them, and I didn't blame them. I wasn't supposed to exist. Can I see your manual again? Lee asked. I said nothing. Ruiz stepped forward and unzipped the side of my duffel without permission. The sound scraped like a razor in the silence. He pulled open pouches, started sifting. Hey, Lee said, more caution in his voice. We're not supposed to. She doesn't have a valid ID, Ruiz snapped. She walked into a secure facility with a bag full of signal gear and handwritten schematics. She could be rogue. She could be anything. He pulled free a waterproof folder from the second compartment and spilled its contents onto the desk. Printed overlays, yellowing maps, frequency ladders hand-labeled in a language few still remembered. My handwriting sharp and square. Fieldborn. These look like they're from a classified suite, Ruiz muttered. They are, I said. He turned. And you just carry these around? They're mine, I said. They were written in the field, during operations that don't exist in your database. I'm not a spy. I'm not a contractor. I'm a leftover. Ruiz looked unconvinced. He reached again, this time toward the repeater module. Thin black frame, hardened, still marked with the Sentinel insignia etched faintly into the surface. Don't touch that, I said evenly. He paused. For a second, I saw a flicker of unease in his eyes. Why not? Because you won't understand what it's coded to. And if you trigger the wrong pairing, this base will lock its own systems for 12 hours. That's the last line of security Sentinel wrote before we went under. He hesitated, then slowly withdrew his hand. You really expect us to believe this? He asked. No, I said. I expect you to stay out of my way long enough to see what happens when I'm right. Lee, standing behind him, picked up one of my folded note pages. I saw him read a line from a March 2016 log entry. His face changed subtly. Confused. Something didn't line up. This entry, he said, pointing. It shows signal compression patterns that match the anomaly report from Site K-17. But those reports were internal, never circulated to outside analysts. How did you get these logs? I looked at him carefully. Because I wrote the original software. The anomaly wasn't new. It's a copy of a distortion loop we designed as a decoy for enemy scans. If it's coming back now, someone's feeding it in on purpose. Ruiz shook his head. This still doesn't prove you're not making it up. Let me show you the logs, I said. You'll need to submit the device for clearance. No, I said flatly. You won't get past the access protocols without my retina scan and a timed phrase. If you try to brute force it, it burns out. It was designed that way. Ask Monroe if you don't believe me. They didn't like that. Ruiz turned to the camera in the ceiling and gestured. 2 seconds later, the door buzzed open. Colonel Monroe entered. He took one look at the table, then at the unfolded documents. His jaw tightened. I said not to touch anything, he told Ruiz. Quiet. Deadly. Ruiz stepped back. Sir, she's got unsecured modules. She's Sentinel, Monroe said. Silence fell like stone. Lee looked stunned. But the records are classified. And wrong. Monroe walked forward and picked up the repeater carefully as if it were sacred. This module was last registered off Puerto Rico, attached to a submerged relay drone. It was never recovered. I recovered it, I said softly. 5 miles off the drop point, tethered to coral. Still pulsing. Jesus, Monroe muttered. Then he looked at me. Why didn't you come back earlier? I held his gaze. Because we weren't supposed to survive. Because the moment one of us showed up again, people would start asking questions. About the mission. About the tech. About what really happened to the team. He nodded once. It wasn't agreement. It was understanding. Secure her gear, he said to the guards. But no more interference. She operates with restricted clearance under my watch. Ruiz opened his mouth to argue. Monroe cut him off with a glance. Dismissed. The guards exited, slower than they needed to. I heard Ruiz mutter something under his breath. But it didn't matter. The room belonged to the past now. To people like Monroe and me, those who remembered what it meant to vanish for the country's sake. Monroe turned toward me. You'll need access to the primary radar logs. Coastal Echo and Southern Vector. I'll need an isolated input point. I can't trace the anomaly if I'm stuck behind firewall reflections. He nodded. You'll have it. But someone's going to notice soon. If you're right, this isn't a glitch. It's not, I said. It's a ghost signal. One we thought we buried. He folded his arms again. You think this is a message? I thought of the repeater's final pulse recorded 2 nights before I arrived. A pattern I recognized. A sequence that spelled something old, half-forgotten. It's a warning, I said. Monroe led me through the northern wing, past secure bays humming with console chatter and blinking network towers. No one spoke as we walked. Technicians glanced up, then back down. Most didn't recognize me. Those who did didn't say a word. Some ghosts are better left undisturbed. And some are dangerous to acknowledge. He opened a door at the end of a low corridor, plain gray steel, keypad entry, retinal override. The room beyond was clean, spare, and colder than it needed to be. A central workbench. 2 wall terminals. No windows. He keyed in a new access log. This'll give you 24-hour read access to coastal radar logs from Southern Vector through Redline 4. You'll have direct link to the relay buoys. Supervision required. That'll be me. I nodded. Understood. You get 1 shot at this, he added. 1 misstep, 1 flagged packet, and they'll shut this down before we're through the first signal trace. I won't misstep, I said. But you should prepare yourself. For what? I stepped to the terminal and began connecting the repeater through a bridge cable. For the possibility that this anomaly isn't just signal drift. It's intelligence gathering. And if it's active, it means someone's testing our thresholds, looking for dead zones. He watched as I paired the repeater to the terminal, running a low-frequency sweep. His silence wasn't doubt. It was wait. Like a man trying to reconcile one world with another he thought had ended. When the scan locked in, I entered the retina passcode. The screen blinked once. Then again. On the third pulse, the repeater lit up. 4 green bars. Connection confirmed. Monroe stepped closer. Your repeater's still functional after 8 years? It was built to outlive all of us. The diagnostics flooded in. Pulse data, anomaly echoes, triangulation possibilities. The buoys had indeed been pinged sporadically, but with unmistakable precision. Intervals between 6.1 and 6.3 seconds. Location variations less than a nautical mile each time. Not weather. Not drift. And definitely not malfunction. Monroe muttered, these pulses are patterned. I nodded. Look at the echo stack. I expanded the waveform graph. They're bouncing from the same spectral node each time. This one. I pointed to a burst at 3 hours 14 minutes and 22 seconds 2 nights ago. He leaned in. That's a negative space, nothing's supposed to register there. Exactly, I said. That node's a void slot. It only activates when someone triggers a silent handshake. He blinked. You're saying this is a coded call-in? Someone's knocking, I said quietly. And they're using Sentinel's language to do it. He stood motionless for a while. I could hear the clock on the wall clicking behind him. That sound, ordinary, rhythmic, felt deafening now. Like a countdown we hadn't realized had already started. Finally, he asked, could it be one of yours? I hesitated. Maybe? We had 15 on that mission. 9 confirmed lost. 4 unverified. 2 never found. And you? I was underwater. Literally. Egress sub was compromised. I made it out through emergency tether. Landed near Vega Key. No extraction? No trace, I said. That was the point. When we failed clean. He stared at the repeater. Then why did it stay active? Because the protocol only dies when we all do. We designed it to think we were still alive. He nodded once, slowly. Then pulled up a nearby chair. I didn't expect that. He lowered himself with a soft grunt and sat beside me. The colonel who'd once trained under our team's remote briefings, now watching the very tech we'd hidden from the rest of command. Tell me something, he said. I turned to him. That patch. The hawk in the storm, he said. No name, no rank. Why? I tapped the case beside me. We weren't about titles. Sentinel worked in places where structure broke down, where identification meant death. So we wore what meant something to us. A hawk vanishing into gray meant survival. Clarity. The moment before action. He nodded like he understood. Only one squad used that. And when I saw it, something hit me. What? An old after-action report, he said. I was a lieutenant then. Just a training officer. But I remember the name in the margin. Dana Carter. Tapped out after a signal fault over the Atlantic. They said you triggered a failsafe that saved a convoy. I looked away. It wasn't a failsafe. It was me bypassing chain of command to lock the radar loop manually. We lost 3 ships anyway. But you saved 7. No one remembers that part. I do, he said. That's why I stopped those guards. The room felt still after that. Like silence had settled where doubt had lived. I returned to the terminal, pulling up the last 10-day pattern from the Redline 4 relay. The data poured in, rich and irregular, distorted bursts, sudden silences, then a perfect call-response interval logged at 3:14 each night. I pointed. This is communication. Not surveillance. Whoever's using this wants to be heard. Monroe narrowed his eyes. Heard by whom? Someone who understands what this means, I said. Someone like me. The pattern held. For 48 hours, I ran sweeps on every coastal node from Jacksonville to the Dry Tortugas. Each night, 3 hours 14 minutes and 22 seconds. The same burst sequence, faint, deliberate, shaped like a whisper through the noise. Monroe rotated personnel so no one outside a need-to-know saw the logs. By the 3rd night, we had 8 identical pings. No fluctuation. No drift. And always within the ghost band Sentinel once used to mask its position in hostile zones. Whoever's sending this, Monroe said beside me, arms folded, knows your protocols better than our own signal teams. They'd have to, I replied, not looking up. Because this isn't just a ghost band. It's a variant. He frowned. Explain. I expanded the frequency spectrum on the terminal. It's shaped like the original, but there's a harmonic bleed here, see it? This one wasn't written in 2017. This version was modified. He leaned closer. When? I paused. Scanned the time signature embedded in the mod file. My pulse thudded low in my chest. 2 weeks ago. Monroe sat down slowly. Then we've got a problem. I nodded. Someone didn't just find our gear. They rewrote it. I traced the triangulation of the last 4 bursts, filtering by signal strength and bounce angle. The origin point narrowed, 2 clicks off Sandbar Point, south of Charleston. Monroe squinted. There's nothing there. Not on satellite, I said. But the pulses are too uniform to be ship-based. It's fixed. Submerged or buried. Likely a relay node like we used in Havana. He sat back. You think it's one of yours? If it was, they'd use the full Sentinel handshake. This is bait. We stared at the readout. Static, then pulse. Static again. I need to go there, I said. Monroe's jaw tightened. It's a secure coastal zone. Exactly, I said. That means no one should be out there. So if someone is, it's not legal. He hesitated, then stood. You'll have escort. Not military, I said. They'll trigger whatever's out there. Then who? I looked at him. Just one observer. Someone quiet. Someone who won't panic if the ground moves under them. He studied me a long moment. Then nodded. They gave me a coastal transport at dawn civilian skiff engine modded to low frequency. Monroe flew in a single field analyst to accompany me. A woman named Avery. No insignia. No questions. We launched under cloud cover. 70 minutes out. No radar signature. No chatter. The sea was still gray and calm. Just like that night off Puerto Rico. I sat near the bow, the repeater in my lap, watching for any sign of surface distortion. At 6:02, the signal spiked. Directly beneath us, Avery said, checking the scope. I activated the repeater's scan mode. A cone of blue light flashed across the screen, sweeping the waves beneath us. Something pinged back. Got a bounce, I said. What is it? I zoomed in. The shape was faint, buried deep under sediment, but familiar. A curved hull. Not a vessel. A casing. Relay pod, I whispered. Sentinel build. Version 2.8. That's your tech. It was, I said. But it's been altered. I adjusted the repeater's frequency to handshake level. Paused. Then pulsed once. No response. I tried again. Still nothing. Then at 6:03 it blinked. Not a return signal. A flare. One long pulse, too short, then dead. What was that? Avery asked. I stared at the repeater. It's a location tag, I said. And a trigger. Before she could ask, I pointed off the port bow. There. From the sea, 2 radar buoys went dark. Just dropped from the net. Avery tapped her radio. We've got loss of signal on vectors 04 and 06. I didn't move. It's starting, I said. If those buoys don't come back online in 3 minutes, Southern Coast loses tracking for all maritime movement. Watch. At 6:04, the repeater buzzed. Then 2 pulses shot from its internal drive coded commands. I didn't input them. Autonomous recall, I said. Sentinel logic. You mean you wrote this to do that on its own? Yes. In case we ever went dark and someone tried to hijack our grid. Both buoys blinked back to life. Full sync. Integrity restored. Avery stared at the repeater. How? Because the code isn't dead, I said. It remembers. Back at base, Monroe met us at the gate. No formal debriefing. Just the look of a man who'd felt something shift beneath his feet. Confirmed? He asked. Yes, I said. Someone tried to reroute the net. The buoy fail was staged. And you reversed it. I handed him the repeater. I didn't. Sentinel did. It still runs the override I wrote into its firmware. He turned the device in his hand. You understand what this means? I nodded. Someone's probing for blind spots. And if I hadn't been here, we'd have lost them. And maybe more, I said. This time it was a drill. Next time it won't be. Monroe looked down at the Hawk insignia again. It was faded, nearly invisible now. But he saw it. And for the first time he believed it. By the end of the week, the logs told a story too loud to ignore. 3 more attempts. Same time. Same signal band. Different buoys. Each one received a false handshake, an old Sentinel ghost. Each one fell offline for exactly 89 seconds. Then just before full desync, my repeater snapped them back. Monroe brought me into the operations hub on the 5th day. "We're closing the loop," he said. "This isn't just rogue signal play. Someone's testing the net, finding which parts of your code still work and which ones they can overwrite." "Then we've got a breach," I said. "From inside or close enough to mimic it." He nodded grimly. We stood over a wide table where regional radar activity pulsed on a screen. Anomalies in red. After the last recovery, Monroe had integrated my repeater into the core network as a failsafe. Not official. Just hidden beneath the command stack. I didn't ask how he got that approved. Some things weren't meant to be written down. He pulled up a diagnostic report. "You've built something even our own cyber teams can't parse." "Not alone," I said. Sentinel wasn't just personnel. It was protocol. Each of us carried a piece of the system. I handled radar ghosting. Morrison did signal camouflage. Reyes mapped the buffer shells. We were designed to disappear and take the grid with us if compromised. And now it's reawakening. Bit by bit. Like someone's walking backward into our architecture. He didn't speak for a while. Just stood there, watching the echo pulses flicker. Then he said, "You know what this reminds me of?" I looked at him. "Old civil defense tapes," he said. "The ones that said, in case of breach, listen for the tone. You always thought you'd never hear it. But when it comes, it's too late to ask why." I didn't respond. He was right. There are some signals that don't warn. They summon. That night, I sat alone in the room they'd given me. Small. Quiet. The air stale. I unrolled a torn page from my field journal. It had blood in the rain years ago. The ink faded. But the header still showed. Operation Turnfall, 314 in it. I circled the timestamp again. Then I drew 3 marks in the margin. One for each of us left unaccounted for. One for whoever was sending that signal. And one, faintest of all, for me. There was something familiar in the structure of those recent pulses. Not just tactical. Personal. A call sign had been embedded in one sequence. A signature fragment. I'd missed it at first. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a name. J. Reyes. She had died in the trench. Or so we thought. I saw her fall under black water, drag cables torn from her back rig. But that pulse, it was her signature frequency. Slightly warped, but no mistaking it. I leaned back, throat dry. If Reyes was alive and broadcasting, it wasn't just survival. It was a warning. 2 days later, Monroe brought me into a closed-door session. Civilian advisors. Military liaisons. 3 screens filled with signal telemetry. He stood in front of them. Didn't speak right away. Then simply. "Dana Carter, formerly of Sentinel Squad, has prevented 3 system losses over the past 72 hours. Not through conventional detection, but through pattern recognition our own teams couldn't replicate." A murmur swept the room. Some disbelief. Some unease. "She's not back on record," he continued. "She's not returning to service. But from this moment forward, she will operate as an embedded analyst on a need-only basis." Someone asked, why not restore her status fully? Monroe looked at me, then said, "Because Sentinel wasn't a status. It was a necessity. And it doesn't belong to the system anymore." I let a small smile slip. Brief. Gone in a breath. They approved it. No official rank. No name in the logs. But when threat codes lit up the grid, they'd call me. Monroe walked me out afterward. Quietly. "You'll have your repeater port back at the gate. Discreet transport from the outpost near Vega. Not going to question how you pulled that off?" I asked. He shook his head. "You're not a question anymore. You're the answer." We reached the gate. He paused. Looked up at the steel beam overhead. "You know," he said, "we've never named this post. Just a numeric reference. Base 72 Gamma." I followed his gaze. Saw nothing. Just bare metal and bolts. But I knew what he meant. Without another word, he turned and walked back toward the main corridor. Behind me, a crew was already at work, installing a small black plaque into the post's western pillar. No fanfare. Just a sentence. In honor of the Sentinel who returned when she was needed most, making the invisible visible. The sea was quiet that night. I sat alone on the concrete lip behind the radar outpost, watching the dark horizon. My duffel rested beside me. It seems heavier now with silence than weight. The repeater was back in its shell. Its pulse inactive. Waiting. I hadn't spoken to Reyes in 8 years. If that signal was truly hers, then she'd survived alone, or worse, not alone but watched. The kind of isolation only field operatives understood. Not just distance but erasure. Like being buried above ground in the circuitry of forgotten missions. Monroe had left me a sealed envelope before I stepped out. No words on the front. Just my old call sign, Wraith 3. Inside was a comm key. Untraceable. One-time use. Beneath it, a line handwritten in black ink. If you're here, they might be too. Stay ahead. I folded it once and burned it in the barrel outside the barracks. Watch the edges curl, letters disappear. That was how we communicated in the old days. With the implication of what wasn't said. I'm not back in the system. I'm not on payroll. But when the radar flickers at 3:14, someone calls me. And I answer. Not for glory. Not for record. But because sometimes one sentinel is enough. The others, if they're still out there, will find their way home. Or die trying as we were trained. Until then, I remain in the space between the signal and the silence. Where watchers don't sleep. Where ghosts speak through wires. And where the storm always begins quietly like breath before wind. I am not alive in the way most people understand it. But I'm here. And I see them coming.